everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you very much for attending. My name is Justin Keller. I'm the director of the APA Illinois Chicago Metro section. I was thinking about the fact that I learned about Riverside in planning school, and I'm sure planners throughout the country and the world are learning similar things, and we're so fortunate to have it right here. I also want to thank Doug and Ben for bringing this event to us, and for all of you for coming today. We've got a brief time in here with some presentations, and then we're going to go out for a walking tour, and it's just such a gorgeous day. I'm thrilled that it worked out this way. If you're here for certification maintenance credits, we're going to send an email this week or maybe next week just with a link to that so you can log those. And don't forget about our other events next week. We've got a webinar on revitalizing downtowns. Check that one out. And then our big event for the year is in October 8th through the 10th. At the old post office is our APA Illinois State Conference. So hope to see you all there. And I'm going to turn it over to Doug. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Justin. And thank you to the American Planning Association Chicago Metro section for partnering with the Village and with the Olmsted Society of Riverside to hold this event. I want to give a special thank you to the Riverside Public Library and Director Janice Foley, who made this possible, made this space possible and set this up for us today. I told someone coming in, if our talk doesn't inspire you, this room will. So there you go. Or maybe both will inspire you. I hope so. Also, special thanks to Olmsted Society of Riverside. Dan Murphy is the president, and attending and being our tour guides today are Jim Pretzazilka and Kathy Maloney sitting in the back. And you'll meet them when we go out on tour after our discussion. There's also several people I want to introduce from Riverside. First, our village manager, Jessica Francis, is here. We have three trustees, Jill Mateo, Kristen Evans, and Joseph Fitzgerald. Village trustees are in attendance. And we have some staff. Our planner, Ann Siren, is here. Thank you, Ann. We're blessed to have great planning in Riverside from the beginning till now. Let's see, I believe Jennifer Hennigan was supposed to, oh, there you are. I'm sorry, I didn't see you sitting there. Yes, Jennifer Hennigan is a double guest. She's a Riverside Plan Commission chairperson and a resident of Riverside, and also the Community Development Director in Glen Ellen. So thanks for being here, Jennifer. And welcome to all planners, citizen planners and professional planners. You're all planners today. I think planning is a unique profession where we recognize non-professionals as citizen planners. Whether you're on a plan commission, whether you're on a zoning board, or whether you're just interested in promoting good planning in your communities, you are a citizen planner, and a lot of you, of course, are professional planners. Our goal today is to educate, enlighten, and excite you. We hope you will leave today with a greater appreciation for the profession of planning and the practice of city planning, and with an influx of vitamin D after we go for our walk. After our session, you are invited to visit our farmers market on the other side of the tracks, or some of us will go straight to La Barre for a happy hour after our walking tour. So you're invited to attend either or both of those. Next, I would like to get on with the program, and I want to introduce my good friend, Ben Sells. Ben is a writer, psychotherapist, lawyer, former village president of Riverside. He's also a sailing captain and owner of Chicago's oldest sailing school. He has written 10 books, including The Soul of the Law, one of the most important work-life balance books in the history of the legal profession. And that was recently reissued in a special 20th anniversary edition. His latest book is The Lonely Mind, America and Its Discontents. Ben has also written books on Chicago history, including a history of the Chicago Portage and the Tunnel Under the Lake. Justin, you might want to get that book, The Tunnel Under the Lake, about the water, fresh water being brought into the city of Chicago. And of course, Beauty Matters, Lessons from an Olmsted Village is another one of Ben's book, and that is what inspired Ben and I's collaboration to do these sessions. We did one in the 2023 Fall Conference in Naperville, and we're modifying and representing it here today, and again, based on that book. All those books available on Amazon or here in the public library, most of them, if not all. So with that, I will introduce Ben Sells and turn the table over to Ben.
Thank you, and when we're together, I call him Doug. When we're here, I call him President Pollock. So the broader frame for our conversation today has to do with the relationship between the city and nature. Now, the popular mind, the majority mind, I suspect would make a distinction between those two things. In fact, many people, I suspect, would draw some kind of dissonance between the two, as if somehow nature belongs to wilderness, like nature belongs to the forest, to the mountains, to the desert, whereas the city is something peculiarly human-made and not necessarily associated with nature. But that might be the majority view, but that is not the view of a strong strand of your tradition. Mumford, who is, I'm sure all of you have read, said that the city is a fact in nature. And note his second line, mind takes form in the city. Takes form, that italics, that belongs to Mumford. The city takes form in mind. And in turn, urban forms condition the mind. So already in your tradition, there's this notion that there is a psychological influence of the city upon the mind, upon the psyche, upon the soul. Now, for our purposes today, we're going to talk about that same idea in the context of Frederick Law Olmsted. So as all of you probably know, Olmsted is known as the father of landscape architecture. But I want to argue that he was also one of the first, if not the first, American eco-psychologist. And that is because Olmsted believed that nature, both wild nature and human-made nature, has the power to unconsciously influence the soul, the psyche. And what's relevant is Olmsted actually used that word. He used the word unconscious as early as the 1850s, long before it became a common usage in English, and decades before Freud ever introduced his theory of the unconscious. But what's even more radical about Olmsted is that he believed that nature itself is what holds psychological power. It isn't our subjective response to nature that is soul-making. It is nature itself that is both ensouled and ensouling. Now, his idea, and I'm going to use a lot of Olmsted's own language today because he was a beautiful writer, Olmsted was. Olmsted's idea is that nature influences the soul in the same way as the arts. He said that the influence is a poetic one. It is of a kind that goes back of thought and cannot be fully given in words. As an example of this, he once compared a common wildflower, as he put it, peeping through dead leaves or a bank of mossy turf, and a hybrid of the same genus, of a rare color, shown us in a bunch of 20, set in an enameled vase against an artfully managed background. Now, although the latter was more costly, more decorative, more rare, Olmsted believed that it was the former that we probably passed without even noticing, that, as he said, touched us more, may have had a more soothing and refreshing influence. Similarly, he wanted his own landscape architecture to influence the soul, in his words again, as a gentle, persuasive dew, falling so softly as to be imperceptible, and yet delightfully reinvigorating in its results. Now, I draw attention to two words there, refreshing and reinvigorating. What's interesting about those words is that it highlights the fact that Olmsted specifically intended his work to be, his words, a prophylactic and therapeutic agent of vital value. He believed that all people had a sensibility to poetic inspiration, and that if that poetic sensibility is distressed, then it results in what he called a sadly morbid condition, a condition that he believed could be addressed through the regenerative power of nature. The charm of natural scenery, said Olmsted, is an influence of the highest curative value. Olmsted's work affirms the idea that the ensouled world has a healing power. His work was specifically intended to be psychotherapeutic, to care for the soul. Now, Olmsted believed that this therapeutic influence was especially needed when it came to cities. Urban population, as you all probably are aware, was exploding during Olmsted's time. And he bemoaned the conditions of urban life that he said compel us to walk circumspectly, watchfully, jealously, which compel us to look closely upon others without sympathy. For all of the economic and civilizing effects that Olmsted attributed to the city, he also believed that urban life could cause, his words, vital exhaustion, nervous irritation, constitutional depression, excessive materialism, loss of faith, and lowness of spirit. Now, what is of special interest to your work is that Olmsted said that those psychological symptoms did not only result from overcrowding, they resulted from the design of cities themselves. When the city suffers, believed Olmsted, the soul suffers. Our soul suffers. And so the city, he believes, suffered from imposed grids, regimented blocks, straight lines, right angles. And he believed that poorly planned cities led to a breakdown of community, and that breakdown of community results in feelings of isolation, and as he put it, a general debilitation of the mind and moral strength. Now, what's important is that this breakdown of community, the sense of isolation, arises when the city is denied its place in nature. It is when the city forgets that it is a fact in nature, that the city suffers, and through its suffering, we suffer. Now, as in addition to being an artist, you probably know that Olmsted was also dedicated to social reform and was a strong advocate of democracy. He never separated care for the city from the need for social justice and equal opportunity. He believed that by enhancing an appreciation for nature and for beauty in all people, that the city would naturally become more inclusive and more compassionate. His work always holds together service to the psyche and service to the polis. And he believed that what was good for one was always good for the other. He envisioned a sense of community that, as he put it, a community that moves us away from, his words, an individualistic, alienating, competitive, commercial culture to a tradition-oriented, neighborly, communitarian culture in which things and people are not regarded as instruments or means, but as extensions of one's own sympathies and abilities. Now, I noted that Olmsted believed that nature in both its wild and its human-made forms had the power to care for the soul. But I want to ask you today to blur the line between those forms, to imagine that the difference between a Chicago bungalow and a beaver's lodge is one of degree, not of kind. The taste for the beautiful belongs to all creatures. We only differ in our modes of appreciation and our modes of creating. If the city, as Mumford said, is a fact in nature, then the planning of cities is what gives form, Mumford gives form, to our essential natures as both aesthetic and social and political animals. The great opportunity then of your work as planners is to care for the soul of the city while also attending to the practical needs of its inhabitants. And I suggest that there is no distinction between those two. Your work is essentially artistic and therefore therapeutic. And when done well, it cares not only for the soul of the city, but for the soul of all that dwell there. All soul making, All soul making requires vessels to give form to the soul's spontaneous creativity. And that is what you can do in your work. That is what art does. And through art, we can give that kind of form that gives voice to the spontaneous creativity of the soul. So now I want to give you, that's all pretty heady stuff, but let me give you a practical example that you're going to see today, and it's right here behind me, and you're going to see it on your walk today. Swan Pond, one of the places that it's most endeared to the people who live here. It's a 15-acre floodplain. It's on the bend of the Des Plaines River right behind us, and it's a natural wetland. But for years, Riversiders were determined to make it something else. We refused to accept its own nature as a natural wetland. And instead, we tried to make it a soccer field at one point. We tried to make it a carefully manicured lawn at one point. At that time, there was a narrow asphalt path that kind of slashed along its eastern border. And that path had been designed to be so narrow that not too many people at once could fit on it. It was not intended to be an invitation. It was a begrudging acknowledgement that maybe somebody might want to walk along the river. Well, as you can imagine, the soccer field routinely flooded because it's a floodplain. And the asphalt path that was constructed routinely collapsed because the flood water would erode underneath it and it would collapse and couldn't be used. The manicured lawn never made it because the natural plants that wanted to live here kept invading. They became the invasives. The native plants became the invasives because they wanted their rightful place in their own nature. So all in all, it was a way of how not to care for the soul of a place. And what was interesting is that Swan Pond's own resistance to those efforts is a testament to the animation, the agency that exists within nature itself that Olmsted saw back in his day. Well, eventually, the better angels took over, and the village chose to listen to what Swan Pond was saying. The soccer field and this manicured lawn idea, they were scrapped. And the village called in native plant experts to help us redevelop the area in its native wetland state. It took a few years. In fact, it's an ongoing project that will probably take many more years. But the vibrancy of Swan Pond as a wetland has returned. And as you walk through it today, you're going to see that it's alight with pollinators and dragonflies. At night now, the frogs come out to welcome the evening, and the birds nestle and breed down in the grasses. The village also, in its acceptance of Swan Pond's actual nature, recognized it as a floodplain and installed a drainage pipe to help to more efficiently drain the floodwaters when it did drain. And it also helped prevent the erosion that had plagued that asphalt path. But even better, and this is what you'll see today, we got rid of that old path. And the village designed and installed a new path that is wide enough to encourage many people to come and walk together. It's wide enough for people and bicycles, and from a practical standpoint, it's wide enough for maintenance and emergency vehicles to use it if they need to get down to access Swan Pond. The path is made of exposed aggregate, and it winds its way along the river. And at the same time, and those of you who go down into our downtown today, you will see this, it picks up a design element from our downtown streetscape that again echoes and tries to reinforce the importance, the psychological power of the Des Plaines River on our riverside. What has happened now with Swan Pond, it is probably the most diverse place in Riverside now. My wife and I walk down through there almost every day, and we see people from not only from Riverside, but from all around our surrounding communities. It has become a focal point because of its natural beauty. And what I want to emphasize is that what the village finally gave back to Swan Pond reinforces Olmsted's conviction that nature and beauty and the social good go together. Now Swan Ponds invites people not only from Riverside, but from all over to come and to enjoy nature and the simple pleasure of taking a stroll and saying hello to our inhabitants, both human and non-human. Because we cared for its soul, Swan Pond now cares for ours. And this was Olmsted's seminal idea. Its natural beauty has created a stronger sense of civic vibrancy within Riverside, and it has more deeply connected us to those in our surrounding communities. That is the power of listening and caring for the soul of a place. All we did was try to help Swan Pond take nature's own course. And that is exactly what Olmsted, I believe, would have had us to do. So thank you for your kind attention. I'm now going to turn it over to President Pollock, who is going to make some connections about what the kind of the esoteric nature of what I just said and the beautiful work that you all do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben. Boy, that's, I love hearing that. So I failed to properly introduce myself. I'm Doug Pollock. I am an AICP planner, but I'm also village president of Riverside. And I know a lot of you, but not everyone. So thank you for coming. Thank you for attending this event. And I'm going to try to make this a little bit more on the ground level, if you will, a little bit more about, you know, Ben has talked to you about his approach, our belief of the psychology of places, but I'm going to try to give you some specific examples from our profession and from the Village of Riverside. Ben's approach and understanding of planning in cities is shaped by his background in psychology and his appreciation of the natural world. It can be challenging for us to contemplate what Ben is suggesting, that man is nature and the environment we modify with our hands and minds is also part of nature. That can be challenging for us because our culture demands that there's a dichotomy between man and nature. And as Ben said, that there's a separation. And I personally believe that one of the more damaging ideas that we see in the world is that somehow man is above nature and nature is subservient to man, that nature's there for our use. And Ben's contention, my contention, is that nature and man are the same and that they complement each other and work together. And only when that happens do we have good communities to live in. I will show you some examples from Riverside, but also I want to start with our profession of planning. Embracing nature in city planning is not new to any city planner. In fact, it is at the foundation of what city planning is, and is the foundation of our creation story, and it's the reason that we do what we do. We as planners believe that the built environment influences people's soul, people's psychology, people's well-being. We wouldn't do what we do without that knowledge and without that belief. We owe our creative story, of course, to the people who led the City Beautiful movement in the early 20th centuries. People like Frederick Law Olmsted, Daniel Burnham, Edward Bennett, Jens Jensen, just to name a few. In addition to the 1869 plan for Riverside, we had, you'll recall, the White City of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, Olmsted Central Park, and of course Burnham's 1909 plan of Chicago. All based on the idea that cities should enhance the well-being of its citizens rather than simply being a necessary evil or a necessary function of living. My intention, again, is to remind city planners of our roots and responsibilities and thus be reinvigorated to embrace nature in city planning. Please pay attention to the commonality of words that Ben used, that I'm going to throw out, the commonality between our profession, what we do, and the words we hear and read every day in our work, and their direct, clear and direct reference to beauty and the connectivity between humankind and nature. This happens to be a photo of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, but I just want to mention a few words and then focus on two key terms that I think is particularly relevant to what we're talking about today and what we do in our planning practice. Comprehensive plan, comprehensive, all aspects of interactions between living beings and our environment. Comprehensive. Brownfields and greenfields, you hear those terms. Pedestrian scale, or as I like to call it, natural scale. Urban heat islands, land banking, urban farming, just some of the terms, and I'm sure you can think of more, that when you think about those terms and think about what Ben and I are saying today, maybe you'll see those terms in a new light. Two other terms that I find particularly relevant, one is placemaking. You know, it's defined by the Urban Design Lab and commonly known as an approach that aims to create public spaces that inspire and promote social interaction and cultural exchanges. Public spaces that inspire and promote social interaction. In other words, places that invite us to connect with our environment and with each other. Sense of community. This definition is from the American Psychological Association. Our point is that the built environment is essential to our sense of community. Without connecting ourselves to the world around us, both human and otherwise, there can be no sense of community. Next, I would like to show you some examples from Riverside. Small and not so small, but my point of using some smaller examples is that everything we do should have this in mind and should relate back to connecting humans, people with their surroundings and being a part of nature. 43 East Quincy Street. Light industrial building, the village purchased it 5-6 years ago. For the first 2 years, we used it as it still is our Parks and Department Recreation Center. But the point I'm going to make here is the before and after. All we did was to put clear windows and a shade over those windows, and it totally transforms the building. That's what we do as planners. We see those little things, and we say, how do we make this building more relatable to people? The photo doesn't really do it justice, but if you saw it before and after, you would have maybe unconscious, maybe conscious, different reaction to that building before we cleared the windows and after. It's as if we opened its eyes to the world and opened its interior to the world. So it made a big difference. And again, I'm making the point that little things make a difference and can relate to what Ben and I are talking about. Ben showed you a picture of the downtown streetscape. We had received grant funding for a new downtown streetscape, had all the traditional pavers and street furniture and trees and planting boxes and all that. But the question was, how do we make that Riverside? You know, anybody can put brick pavers for a sidewalk, but how do we make that truly Riverside and truly speak to the spirit of Riverside? And there was, quite frankly, from a resident who suggested a meandering row of bricks that mimic our river and mimic our streets. You put that strip, that meandering strip in a traditional grid downtown, and it means nothing to anybody. But in Riverside, it means a lot because it represents us. So it makes that a space that speaks to the natural environment of Riverside. In 2012, the Army Corps of Engineers removed the Hoffman Dam. You may have read over the years, they have now removed all the dams along the Des Plaines River. The first Hoffman Dam was built in the 1820s to provide power for a mill, also for recreational purposes and electricity. Later, the dam, in 2012, the dam was removed by the Army Corps of Engineers with the intent of restoring the river's natural state. As a result, upstream riffles, runs, and pools have been restored, and sampling of the fish population by Illinois Department of Natural Resources has found a total of 10 new species which were not previously found in the upstream pool. Channel catfish, a species not found anywhere upstream of the dam prior to removal, have also returned. And anecdotally, I could tell you the beaver population, the otter population, the entire ecosystem along that river has been restored simply because we removed our intrusion into the river, the dams. And I know Ben covered Swan Pond, so I won't talk much about that, but it is such an important aspect of what we're talking about. It's such a great example of good planning that I just want to mention it again. And it's basically finding and respecting what the land wants to be, what the land wants to be led to great satisfaction and fulfillment for the natural environment, including for people. Let me say that again more clearly. These improvements led to great satisfaction and fulfillment for the natural environment, including for people. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about an issue that is particularly important in the Village of Riverside. And some of Riverside people will relate to this. And that's the ongoing debate that has existed in Riverside since the beginning of this village. And that is, how do we use the open spaces, the green spaces? How do we use them? Active, passive? What's the proper balance? For as long as I've been in Riverside, and I know from reading history of Riverside, that debate has been ongoing. And it's always been a very two-sided debate. Those seeking to protect passive green space, citing sustainability, the Olmsted vision, and our landmark status as obvious reasons to stop encroachment of active recreation into green spaces. Those seeking more recreation opportunities using property values and family support as obvious reasons to enhance and expand active recreation in the village. As a result, residents become very frustrated, and if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times. Why do we keep having this debate? And I hear that from both sides. My position as village president, and certainly as a city planner, is that we must keep having this debate, that these decisions are difficult because of their importance. I remember an old self-help book from the 70s. The opening line is, "Life is difficult. Once you realize that, you can transcend that difficulty." And that relates very much to this decision. We need, as a village, to understand these are difficult decisions because they're important. And they should be difficult, and we should hear from everybody when we're faced with these decisions. So I have been trying to reframe that issue in Riverside. First, we must eliminate the idea that it's either-or problem, an either-or problem requiring an either-or choice. What we are suggesting is that it is not either-or, but rather a spectrum of decisions. And perhaps most importantly, what we're suggesting that is that it is critical to bring the land itself into that discussion, and the land as a viable agent in its own right. Not only what do we humans want, but what does the land want? Of course, this is a dilemma that planners face every day at different levels, different degrees. Balancing the need for the humans to occupy the land, to use the land, but also to respect the land. And when we are able to make that balance, we create better environments. How do we interact with our environment in a way that creates a spiritual and mutually beneficial place for people and the world in which we live? That is the question I think planners need to ask ourselves every day. As Ben laid out, the built environment created by the hands and minds of people is nature, as is the beaver's dam or bird's nest. It is not a question of kind, it's a question of degree. When we ignore the connection between man and nature, we begin to erode the soul and spirit of both humans and nature. We as professional planners and as citizen planners know this. It is our origin story and it is our reason for being. Ben and I hope that this serves as a reminder of the of the responsibility and opportunity that planners have, and as encouragement to keep doing our work of building great communities. So thank you very much for that. We will open it up for questions and answers. But before we do that, let me just remind you again, after we're done, we'll take a 5-minute break. Anyone needs to use the restroom in the lower level, and then we'll start our walking tour. So, questions, answers, comments? Yes. Thank you.
Was that used very recreationally behind the dam? Was that a big issue?
It's my understanding, and I'm sorry, yes, the question, I'll repeat it for the microphone. The question was, was the dam there for recreational purposes previously? And the answer is yes. At some point, it was built to create a more calm, broader area for boating. Talking 100, 200, 150 years ago, right, Jim?
Actually, it was designed originally for a mill. And there was a little waterfall there originally, and then they built a dam in 1828. Wooden dam, by the way. And later on, there were 4 additional dams put up. The mills got bigger. If you ever been to Hinsdale, the Brown Mill, there's one like that right across the river from us. The mill race and everything. It's long gone now.
Thank you.
That's why it was there.
Yes, Kimberly.
Is there in general stormwater challenges that this study has to encourage redevelopment, or is that kind of just being addressed with the other agencies? Is that a limiting factor at all in this neighborhood?
Stormwater management wasn't a factor in the Hoffman Dam removal.
Right.
And as far as village-wide, we have the same problems every other Cook County municipality has in terms of managing stormwater. We are built out, so there's not a lot of new impervious areas being added. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
The question was the impact of stormwater management on the village, right?
Right, I just didn't know if there was anything you're doing with, you have this open space and how you use it. Can you do more creative stormwater management things that would help other areas redevelop, or,
So I can add a little bit to that. So we're very much aware of that problem. Our largest commuter parking lot, we partnered with MWRD to turn that into a permeable lot, and also we built a swale, like a rain garden, combined to it, and that's been an ongoing effort by the village. Every time we have an opportunity to convert impervious space into pervious, we do that, and I believe that I'm correct that the village is currently thinking about finding ways to incentivize homeowners to do the same thing. So, and we also suffer because much of our village has a combined sewer system, and so that as we are redoing our sewers, to the degree we can, we're separating them. So that's another big part of it. Other questions? It all makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good, thank you.